you. Sung Choi here. Okay. Bill,
Yes, here.
Kevin,
I'm here.
Tony,
Here.
Justin,
Here.
Brent,
Here.
Robin Navarro. Oh, wow. Brandon.
Here.
Come on, okay. Alan,
Here.
Lawrence,
Here.
Ron,
Here.
Marianne,
There we go.
sorry, Marianne.
And Mary Ann, yes? Yes. Okay, so we have, what, all but one?
Yes.
So we have a quorum, and we have public comments, but they are coming with various agenda items. And so let's go ahead with the agenda. So there's one agenda, non-agenda comment, and that's from Todd Jones. Todd, would you like to share your non-agenda comment? And the title is Unanswered Questions.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I'm here to remind this committee about the unanswered questions that have been asked in previous meetings. Demand the answers, please. This committee asked, what is the total value of the energy management system? This committee asked to see a comparison between Measure P and this bond of the total money used for construction management. The committee expressed incredulity on how the current bond is spending $202 million, or 42% of available funds, on outside consulting fees, versus Measure P, which only spent $4 million, or 2.7% on consulting fees. The vast difference demands a full explanation for the accounting and examples of known college construction projects. Can we see an example of published consultant fees for a known building construction? In the December meeting, this committee asked to see a cost comparison of retrofit versus rebuild for the W building. That was to see that comparison, which was used to inform the decision to demolish the entire building. Item 10 of the minutes of the March 12th meeting calls for there to be an agenda item on the W building. I don't see it on today's agenda. Please take action to add it. Finally, this committee should draft a letter to the Board of Trustees with a recommendation that they postpone any decision to demolish the W building without a fully transparent justification. So far, the explanations are vague references to building codes and the Chancellor's office. When I read the relevant building code, I find out it is not being applied correctly. The code explicitly states that the cost of seismic retrofits need not be included in the 50% cost comparison. Yet, that is exactly what has been done here in order to make it look like the W building is forced to be demolished. Please ask for a fully referenced and cost-justified explanation from the facilities office so that the Board of Trustees can decide from a fully informed position when they vote on June 18th, which is just a few days. Let me make an historic reference here. It is this that in 2011, there's an article from the Pasadena News, April 13, 2011. The Serafian building was similarly condemned by then President Mark Roca, using the exact same fraudulent argument on the exact same building code. And we all know how all of that turned out. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And I also have on item A1 a request from Alyssa Michelson. Alyssa.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Professor Michelson. I wanted to point out that there is no attachment to the agenda item, Facility Strategic Plan Update, on board docs. Shouldn't there be a data and evidence-based rationale for decisions to demolish and rebuild complete buildings, not just pretty pictures and bullet points on a PowerPoint? Do you have any data in front of you? If the PCC administrators are going to be showing you a PowerPoint today, it should have been on the agenda 72 hours ago. At your last meeting, I was shocked to find out that not even you had received the expense report ahead of time, which also hadn't been posted for the public. Is it deliberate deliberate to make it hard for the public? A few years ago, the college was put on probation by the statewide accreditation body partially for violating the Brown Act law so often. I recommend you get an independent advisor about what best practices are in terms of transparency and public participation and how to abide by the Brown Act. Because at this school, they step all over it. That doesn't mean you have to too. Where are all the documents you've been promised over the last few meetings? Like, did you get those emails that VP Jones promised to send you all? If so, why hasn't it been provided on the board docs or online portal too, or in the minutes? In any case, I'm not sure it's kosher to even be getting private information related to public items. At the last meeting, Vice Chair Lamar wanted to know how much work would be local. You also had ongoing questions from 6 months ago, like about the W building or allocations of expenditures for inside versus outside services and other projects versus Measure PCC project funding. And also you asked about outside consultants getting $204 million in bond. Also, VP Jones promised to put the entire bond language on the website. Guess what? It's not there. 3 months ago, you asked legitimate questions about Rosemead campus, but you got vague answers about the height of the building and how much it would cost. They told you it depends on programming. Don't you think programming should be set before deciding de facto to demolish Rosemead and rebuild it from the ground up? The same is true for other buildings the administration wants to demolish and spend bond money to then rebuild. At the March meeting, you were crystal clear. You wanted to know about the W building. VP Jones agreed to put it on the agenda, and it's in your minutes, but it's not on the agenda today. If you haven't seen the Star News, Pasadena Now, or Colorado Boulevard outlets, the bond and census demolitions, the displacement of dance, and this master plan have been hot ticket items. Now, how many times up?
Go ahead.
Okay, so now the board is being given, or trustees, is being given just 2 choices to vote on one. Both of them have the W building being demolished. To be clear, this isn't about the W. This is about making the best decisions for the use of the bond, and if you're not overseeing that, who is?
Thank you. And so on item A3, we have Dylan Rill.
Yes.
Pardon me? Yeah.
Before we move forward, can you just guys make that note of where the expenditure report is?
On board docs, on the expense report item B1, and there's an attachment.
And that's on the website.
That is correct. We'll just keep it there.
Well, a point of reference for 3 is the minutes, so if you turn to those in your packet, you see that you have the minutes there for you, and we've got all pages for you, and so, Dylan, if you'll come.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. Okay. Are we ready to start?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know when we were like ready, set, go. Okay. Hello. Today I want to talk about the L building budgets. My name is Dylan Ryle. I'm a student at PCC, and I believe in a commitment to creating a dialogue with the board members and the public on the matter regarding planned construction of the L building.
Excuse me, we're on item A3, that's what you would put down that you wanted to talk about, which is the approval of the minutes. Is that what you want to address?
Minutes? I'm sorry.
You put on here that you wish to address agenda item A3, which is the minutes.
Oh, sorry. I was budgets for me. Sorry about that.
You want to talk about the budget? Okay, so then why don't you just call it and we'll,
I apologize.
okay. So let's go to the minutes now. You have the minutes in front of you. If you've had a chance to review them, are there any additions, corrections? Yes.
I had one change, page 2, section 5, first line towards the end. Trustee James A. Osterman regarding, quote, keeping out promises to build PCC's future. I'm thinking maybe that should be an hour where you are.
Keeping our promises.
Yeah, it sounds out there.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Noted.
I just have a question. Is there a reason why the W building is not on, or talking about the W building or presentation about the W building is not on our agenda this time?
We covered that under the facility strategic plan.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'll give an update as to the plan.
Other comments regarding the minutes?
So the checks are, is that for the people in attendance? The check boxes, 'cause I wasn't here.
So okay, that's a correction for Brent.
We had a clone here.
AI.
Brent was not here.
I have some corrections, because I was here, so. I'm not Mark. At least that's what I told my wife.
Ron, you were here.
Ron, yeah, and then page 3, item B in the Rosemead update. One thing, there is no Pipeline Middle School, so maybe it's referring to some kind of program, but there's no Pipeline Middle School. Muscatel Middle School is there.
Which paragraph is that?
B, section B, it's only one paragraph at the very bottom.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So Pipeline Middle School, there's no Pipeline Middle School in Rosemead. Also, it might be a program for the high school, but it's not a middle school.
Muscatel is the middle
Candace, do you
school.
want to
Muscatel is the
clarify
middle
that?
school, yeah.
The Muscatel is the middle school, so we'll make that correction.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's called Muscatel Middle School?
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
in there already.
Okay, so that's just a duplicate of.
I think the reference was a
Okay, so we'll
pipeline to
just
middle
strike,
school.
we just.
Oh, maybe,
Yeah.
right, but it's a Pipeline Middle School, so like, it sounds like it's a
Pipeline
middle school.
element, yeah.
So we're going to
It's a
strike the
pipeline
Pipeline
program.
Middle School there, okay? Other? Thank you for reading the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve with the updates.
Okay, Brandon moved, and who seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Brandon moved and Ron seconded that the minutes of the Bond Oversight Committee of March 12th be approved as corrected. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And so let's move on to the expense report. And
So this is what was posted on the board docs agenda in advance for your review. So these are the list of the projects that have currently utilized bond funds with the budgets, the expended, any amounts that are encumbered, and then the balance of what those original budgets were. That doesn't mean that the full budget of a project is included. So for example, the new building construction east of Serafian Design, the budget says $247,000. That is just a starting point for us to get started in terms of selecting an architecture firm to kind of assist on those pieces. Or if you look at, I think there's a student services building, again, $340,000. Again, those are startup budgets in order for the college to start the planning processes for those pieces. But you will see that there is some designation of some budgets allocated for it, what's been expended against those budgets, and then encumbered, which then gives you the balance totals, which the full expended total use of funds. You'll see is expended is a little bit over 16 million at this point. It's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's sort of our getting started, portion of the projects. What amounts are encumbered, and then what balances are left in the initial issuance of the $130 million that was issued, or that we sold bonds for in July of 2023. And then the full project details are on each of these sheets. So if you want to take a moment, you can look through those, or if you have any other questions, we're here to answer those.
With the expended prices, those are the ones that we already spent, right?
Correct. Those are the funds that we always ask for you all to approve.
Question about the Rosemead site purchase. Is that $13 million the total purchase? Because I know last time we were talking about they were trying to get one
Two
corner.
additional two parcels.
So-
So that's what's been expended to
That's
date
correct,
on this
that's everything.
report. We have two additional parcels that are currently in escrow for a little bit over $4 million. That will add to that total that you will see on your next
Okay.
expense report. You're welcome.
So I have a question about this construction management line item. We discussed it before, I apologize. But for example, looking at the Octagon construction management expenditure, just over $345,000. Generally speaking, what is that comprised of? I'm not sure if there's a breakdown.
Can you speak to that a little bit, Richard?
Certainly. That is the soft costs on the backside of developing the project, going through some miscellaneous issues that we had during the scoping process of this project, and then taking it through design and into construction and closeout. So I'll take a moment to explain something. When we talked about the original budget and possible percentages, there's going to be projects that are construction management or soft costs that are going to be under 20%. And then there's going to be projects like this project where the soft costs may exceed 30-40%. And that's sometimes due to we have a bad design or we encounter unforeseen conditions. We do our due diligence, we do underground scanning, we look at all the archive plans, but there can always be something when you do a modernization project. And so this particular project has gone over on time. It has gone over on a series of things that weren't identified on the original building plans. And so it required additional architectural services and it required additional construction management services to get it to the point where we got today where it's finished.
That's helpful, thank you.
I believe, Candace, did you have additional detail among the, I think we had a question under the cost of issuance, the things that related
Yes.
to the issuance course, and I think
So
we're going to do a detail on that. You have.
Yeah, it's included. So since that particular, a couple items that you all asked for, but they're not agendized, and so they're in your packets just as informational items for you all. We also put links to resources on the agenda itself. So the cost of issuance, if you scroll through your packet, as well as the local business report is also included here. So there is a cost of issuance that you will see that just gives the breakdown of sort of our bond counsel fees, our financial advisor, escrow agencies, which totaled $380,000 for this bond issuance. It's not numbered. But it's right after the expense report. So you'll see all the costs broken down for those items. And then this was also in your original booklets that you guys have. And then you'll see on the next page the summary of all of the issuance. So the one additional piece, you'll see cost of issuance on this page one piece that looks like this. That is a reference to that 380. The previous page shows you a breakdown of that 380, and the additional piece is the underwriter's discount, which is an additional $422,500. So this gives you all of the sources and uses of that.
So is that the underwriter's discount? That's essentially the sales commission.
That's
for the
correct.
bond is in the 400.
That's correct.
Right. So, okay. So
That's
the total.
correct.
Okay. So the total that means then the total cost of issuance come up to less than $1 million on the 130. Is that right?
That's correct. It's a little over 800.
Okay. Are there other questions or discussion? But we'll turn it off.
800,000. It's on your, so the total
Yeah.
would be then on your
I see.
PCC cost of issuance. So that's what makes up that number.
Okay. So we will.
Question on the Astronaut. Concerning the construction management, I know that you gave general examples on what could lead to the cost that's determined about construction management. But could you expand on the specific
provide reasons as to why a lot of money was spent on construction management in the Octagon meeting or something?
We can do two things. First, I would say not all the funds that are related to Octagon are on here. Some of that project was, as you were shared when we were down there, it was a shared project. There were some deferred maintenance funds or scheduled maintenance funds used on that project that are not being referenced, which then throws or skews what you see there in relationship to the other costs. There was scheduled maintenance, and then we also used CARES funding for the equipment purchases. So this is just the pieces of, so that you're aware, when we approved the bond, or the bond was approved in November of 2023, the board approved a resolution that allowed us to backfill any, which legally our bond counsel said, if they put a resolution, they had a resolution in our January board meeting that said prior to issuance, which was July, that if there were any fees that, any costs that could be associated with the bond, that then we could reimburse the district. So a portion of the full Octagon project is not actually on your Measure Sheet PCC report, because some of those funds were actually used for capital outlay or scheduled maintenance funds. So I just want to clarify, what you're seeing is not the full cost of the Octagon job. Now, the secondary piece that I think Richard has already shared with you or the team tonight was there are unknown conditions that become made available when you get into a project, right? So we talked about there are unknown conditions when you get in and you sort of think through, or that are not on building plans that then, if they're not, it requires the district to take then responsibility after it's been planned or designed to then go back into a design process to account for those pieces.
And that's not uncommon either, Candace or Richard, for contractors to bid a contract knowing that they're going to come back citing local conditions and then vastly increase the price. So when those happen, I guess you're telling us when that happens, putting it in the budget.
So this is one of those conditions, yeah.
Yeah.
This is to be, maybe to clarify a little bit more for you, Tony, this project has gone double the amount of time it would have normally gone, just because of the difficulties that we've experienced on lead times with the pandemic, some design issues that we had to work through. So that required the project management team to be engaged twice as much or twice as long as they normally would have on this project. So we're at a point where we finally are getting across the finish line. We will do an analysis afterwards and figure out exactly what's going on as far as maybe using different architectural services next time for a similar project. Also looking to see if there was something that we could have done differently. But in general, when we consult the plans that we have in our archive and then we dig up and we find a footing that's not on any plan, we have to pivot and adapt. And in doing that, it adds to contract time and duration to deliver the project.
Thank you.
Candace?
Yes.
Question, just a small thing, just the financial advisor, then there's financial advisor expenses.
So if they were travel on, so any of our contracts when we work with contractors, if they travel on our behalf, like attending board of trustees meetings or things like that, we're required to pay for those pieces.
Okay.
So those are usually expenses, or they could be expenses related to documents that they've produced, or costs related to that. So it's all expenses related to the production of materials that we're using for our board of trustees,
So
and or travel expenses.
They separate expenses and their fees.
They do. So that it can be clear for us when we get the invoices.
Okay.
Other comments or questions before we go to public comments on the budget expenses?
One other question, plumbing repair. There's one line item there, repair upkeep buildings and grounds, $259,547. And my question there is there any breakdown that is accessible that gives us some idea of what the 259 went to? And how is it determined what plumbing repairs are funded through this manner versus other operational type funds?
Yeah, so on this plumbing repair, we've had a number of emergency services, especially on this building, C building. We had some broken underground drainage pipes that actually flooded the basement of this building last winter. In addition to that, we've had some infrastructure fail. It is a 100-year-old campus, and we've had some emergency gas line repairs. We can always come back and detail it. This is probably a conglomeration of 2 or 3 projects. It just fell into that bucket of plumbing repairs.
Okay. And if the expense is over a certain amount, is that when you tap into measure PCC funds versus other or maintenance operational type?
Let me try to answer your question. We have 3 funding streams. So we have a scheduled maintenance funding that comes from the state. Those projects are identified on a 5-year cycle. And then we may not get all the money of the estimated cost from the state, or in this year, the state actually took money back from us. So we actually run a scheduled maintenance program that's funded by the state. Then we have a general capital outlay program funding that we do for, we get an annual budget and we work on the projects in the college with that for our maintenance and minor repairs. And then we have measure PCC.
So PCC sort of fills the gap,
If it's not planned, like if it's.
unanticipated.
Yeah, and it fits into the bond language.
Got it, of course. Thank you.
Ken, just kind of follow up on your comment, you say if it's not planned.
Like needing emergency.
Yeah, so how did that, let's use plumbing as an example, how do you budget for like $59,000 for on-time maintenance?
That was probably not budgeted, that was an invoice. That was an expenditure.
I don't know, I don't think
Could you,
budget-
as you're making comments, please, or questions, could you please, for everybody's benefit and for the benefit of the record, reference the page number and what item you're looking at?
Yeah, on page 1 of 21 of the plumbing repair on the first column budget, plumbing repair $259,547 budget.
And then the match is the expense, which is
Expenses,
$259.
yeah.
So I think the connection is there was a project and an invoice related to an emergency that then we received an invoice for, quickly budgeted the line, and then expended it.
So just curious from going forward perspective, every fiscal year there will be, like for this line plumbing repair, if there is not covered through the capital outlay, not covered through state scheduled maintenance, there could be some plumbing line here.
That's correct.
Got it. I just want to get clarification on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, as we move forward in this, thank you, and to our speakers, and we have 3 coming up. If you would, during this, our charge, even if we're not here to rehash how the bond was promoted, we're not here to make decisions about what to go ahead with or the decisions that are those of the trustees. We're here to see that the expenses and the expenditures match the bond language, and we have the bond language, but we also have it summarized on each page. And if you look at the plumbing repair and then you go back to page 11, you see there's just the 1 entry there, and we've had an explanation of that, but it's clear. The bond language at the top, you see, says repair or replace leaking roofs and plumbing. So, our charge is to say, is that what it was used for? And so we've had that explanation. So and I think as we go through these, what we need to do is try to, and I'm trying to listen as we hear the comments, even though some of us might like to have more authority than we have, our charge is to say, does the spending match the bond language exactly? So we have to listen to where we've got a place we can get our hook into it, and if we don't, then our charge is to go into that in enough detail to see whether or not we think it's answered, and if not, and it never gets answered, then at the end of the year, we are to put together a report on what we have seen during the year, and we report it. That's our charge. So even though we might like to have the trustees' authority to reorder things and decide what things are done and when things are done, that's not what we're here to do. And so I would appreciate it too, as our speakers come up, if you can reference budget items. You've all got copies of our expense reports when we're looking at expenses and budget. If you could do it in terms of the mismatch, if you have criticism of it, or if you wish to commend the staff on the other hand for their excellent job in doing it, if you find that's the case, the look at the bond language and the numbers that we have and where we need more illumination, if that's what the case is. And so if there are no further comments from the committee, then we'll turn to our public comments, and in alphabetical order, there are three. We'll hear first from Todd Jones, then from Melissa Michelson, and then from Dylan Real. Todd?
All right. Thank you for providing the expense report in advance in board docs. I noticed that the expense report contains 5 new categories of spend compared to the original, the first report of December 5th. They are energy management system, the Rosemead site purchase, three is relocatable classroom roofing repair district-wide, and 4 is new student services building, and 5 is the swing space conversion. Also, there were 4 categories which received budget augmentations on here. One is the parking lot 4 rehabilitation, 2 is the mirror pool, and 3 is the Sexton Auditorium modernization, and 4 is augmented was the W building demolition. The 5 categories added $19.4 million to the spending, and the 4 augmentations added $622K. There should be some explanation given for these changes to the budget plan. Why weren't these new categories foreseen?
Thank you, Todd. And it's noted in Candace, you can have that's one you can respond to if you like to.
Sure, so the budgeted items are not expenses, and so there haven't been, you only see the expended funds in the second column. So whenever we identify a project, we have to place some budget funds for it in order to expense against them. And so the new projects that you will consistently see this list grow through our bond program activity with you all. This list will grow, and then new items will receive budget allocations for them. And then in future meetings, if it's a new one, then you'll see future expenses against that budgeted item. So there haven't been $19 million in expenses. The total expenses to date, use of funds, is $16,038,984, which is the accumulation of the expended column.
Thank you. Okay, and so Melissa Michelson.
Just before I begin though, what is in your packet? Because we only see the enrollment, the yellow, the red expense reports, just 10 pages into the public. Do you guys have more? Because I think the public deserves to know what you guys are looking at.
What you see on the screen is what we had in the packet. You've received nothing. Has anybody received any
PowerPoints?
outside information?
Now the PowerPoint for this evening.
As long as it's those red ones, that's great. But there was one page that we wanted. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying. All right. Well, just as it's impossible for you, I'm sorry. In August and November expense report, the demolition budget for the W building was at $55,000. In the current expense report, without clarification, the demolition budget for W has increased to $280,000, with the full amount earmarked for construction management. The student member here asked clearly what the construction management is used for and why it has increased in places. I honestly did not understand the answer. It was very long. Anyway, over the past 6 months, each time the administration's narrative about the W building falls apart, they come up with a new one. First it was seismic, but the seismic report, which you probably haven't seen, says it needs three simple retrofits. Then administration says it needs to be evacuated no matter what. But at town halls, when asked what actually needs to be done, there's no explanation. There was an explanation given about a state guideline given to the Board of Trustees a couple months ago. But when you actually read the code, it says demolition isn't necessary as long as you're working on retrofits and HVAC systems. And thus, it's not more expensive to renovate. I might remind you that the college has not yet decided to demolish W or L or other buildings. The administration has, though, at least since October. I'm not sure if you'll be hearing about the two choices being offered to the board tonight, but there's no attachment on the agenda, by the way, as I told you. But like I said, both choices, if you want to call them that, involve tearing down W, that dance and kinesiology students have used since the building was built in 1961. There's been no sound evidence for the need to demolish or over-repurpose or renovate entire buildings, like L and W, and one would wonder where these new figures have popped up from. One explanation I've heard was simply to demolish W to make way for swing space bungalows for the L building while they await their new building, which managers and staff will occupy to administer student services. So in the W, there are two, in case you don't know, there are two large dance studios that have hardwood floors and mat flooring, with the exception of one dance professor. Students and teachers have told the administration at town halls that they don't see a need to take the building offline yet, except the college has already spent over $36,000 to renovate a smaller room in the GM building to put mat floors, which professors say that it's inadequate, it's too low and small. And that's in the process of vacating the W building already. So is that in your expense report, $36,000? Also, PCC staff are being used to work in that room. How is that being itemized in the expense report? It's not outside contractors doing that. The only reason I have seen any of these documents is because I've asked for public records requests. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I just, if you look at page 15, that has to do, most of the comments have to do with that, and the charge for the authority under the bond is demolition of temporary and or obsolete and unsafe facilities. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess you're questioning whether or not the judgment about it being obsolete is correct? Is that the essence of it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we don't make that determination, but maybe you could just tell us briefly about the determination. And I think for those of you who read the Star News, there was some discussion of that this morning, but maybe you could expand on that so we can understand whether it really is obsolete. And that's not our decision, I don't think, to make that,
right,
unless we think, as a matter of fact, that it isn't obsolete. And I guess we could call it out, but the trustees are going to make that determination, I guess. But go ahead, Richard and Candace.
So the approved facility strategic plan in 2020 approved the demolition of L building, W building, and V building. You can find the approval of the demolition of those buildings on the facility strategic plan, which is linked on your resources document in board docs.
Thank you.
And when you say facilities strategic plan, you mean the facilities?
Master plan.
Facilities master
Thank
plan,
you.
2020.
Yes. So to clarify, we've tried to start using the new Chancellor's Office language related to facility, any use of the word master. So the previous plan was called the 2020 Facilities Master Plan. That plan, which was approved by our Board of Trustees March 20th of 2020, is on the website. And if you look in that document, there is approval to demolish those three buildings.
And the only reason I was raising it is
Yes,
because
because
on the
we-
website it's called
says-
facility.
Yeah. And then now we're starting to use the verbal language of facility strategic plan, just like we're changing the language to the educational strategic plan, which used to be called the educational master plan, And we are also changing the language on the technology master plan, which now we call this technology strategic plan. So thank you for that clarification.
Well, that's why houses don't have master bedrooms anymore.
Yes.
I have a question. So on the facilities master plan, is there explanation of the obsolete and unsafe characteristics?
Yes, so if you look on, I can get you guys the page number. I wish we have, no, well, that's that, but it's like a 200-page document. So the largest issue in terms of obsolete would be that for programming purposes, that building currently is about a 43,000 square foot building. The intention and use of that footprint on campus is to build a 100,000 square foot building. So it's double the size because the intent and the use and the growth of programs actually warrant a larger building on that footprint, which is why it was slated for demolition.
And then was part of the question also about the relocation of part of the program, the dance program, is that part of your question?
It
Or
still
the
doesn't make,
offices? No,
it doesn't make any sense why it's obsolete, why the dance students have been moved out of there.
Okay,
It's not obsolete.
okay.
I just have a further question, if it's okay.
Yes.
Well, so on the facilities master plan, it mentions that the replacement building will be for academic purposes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Has there been any? Is there data in the public about the enrollment data that possibly led to the determination of the W building with all of its movement classes being replaced with an academic building?
Yes, there's enrollment data that's given at all of the Board of Trustees meetings, so I mean, certainly if you just looked on the YouTubes of those, specifically related to this plan, in both the presentations that were done at the March board meeting, there was an inclusion of the enrollment of those classes. Those classes, there are, I mean, I can be really specific on each one of those classes. There is a ballet class that has 8 students. There's another ballet class that has 2 students. There's a modern dance class that has 20 students. So is that what you're looking for related to those, or are you talking about enrollment as a whole?
As a whole, was there a document that also provides information on what you mentioned as well?
Yes, so if you go onto, again, the Pasadena City College website, there are actually data dashboards that you can look at all of the enrollment based on program, discipline, and actually drill down to the classes. So if you go there real quickly to Pasadena.edu.
Is it possible to provide this to the members as well?
Well, I'm going to show you exactly where it is.
Okay.
So you go institutional effectiveness, if you can search for institutional effectiveness. Oh, thank you. She's showing you her way.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the data dashboard, scroll up, Lizette. Data dashboards. All of the college's data dashboards are here. There's one specific for enrollment by program, by discipline, and by FTS. So you click on other data dashboards. So you are welcome to go into the enrollment information data dashboards to gather all of that information.
And I also, one more thing.
Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. I also looked through the Pasadena Star News article and found that apparently it costs less to retrofit the building than it is to demolish it. Around roughly $20 million compared to $30 million. So, should that be part of the main determination in determining whether it's more financially practical to retrofit the building instead of demolishing it?
So our board of trustees will make that determination. So at our June 18th meeting, what I would advocate for you all is to log into that meeting via so I want to answer your question, but it's a part of my update related to the facility strategic plan. Could we hold on that, and then I could speak specifically to that point?
Because I just want to make one comment that it just seems like it's more financially practical to retrofit the building than it is to demolish it. At least according to the Pasadena Star News article.
So I can speak to that in a moment.
Okay, so we'll do that. And so, Dylan?
Yes. Sorry about that confusion earlier. I didn't mean to. Oh, okay, great. So, hello. Today I wanted to talk about the L building and budgets. I'm a student at PCC. I believe in a commitment to creating a dialogue amongst board members, this committee, and the public on the matter regarding the planned destruction of the L building and the allocation of money towards renovation. On May 8th, I spoke about the first time on the 2024 master plan to demolish the L building without a discussion on the table on whether or not there would be a renovation or possible expansion of the building in the plan, and subsequently in the budget. I explained how the philosophy behind building new and bigger buildings has been established with the destruction of historical buildings is harmful to the overall historical nature of this college. And having renovation of the L building, PCC's first library, which has been standing over 70 years, the budget could be spread more evenly among other projects and would preserve the wonderful history that we have. Yet this dialogue has unfortunately been put aside for demolition, with the overall cost still not clear and the overall cost still increasing for the facilities plan overall. Although I understand the reasoning behind this speedily put through, given the 10-year time frame for Measure PCC, clarity and communication is always nice. To further my point, demolishing this building repeats a depressing pattern of demolition versus renovation, which has spurred many individuals and the Pasadena Heritage Society to seek to preserve the history of PCC and of Pasadena. When we're looking at budgets, is it not plausible to see what the budget would be for renovating this building and possibly figuring out some way to expand the current facilities given the increased costs set at this meeting? I'm not too sure if it would be cheaper, the same, or more expensive, but a conversation or official paperwork would be lovely to see the cost differences so that it may be decided at a board meeting. The paperwork for identifying the cost between construction versus renovation would be a prime chance to see the differences in budgets to see if the budget is being used in an efficient manner. In times like these, is it not necessary to preserve the history of this illustrious institution given its 100-year anniversary? I see the renovation occurring with older buildings like the C building exterior and the E building, which I am very grateful for. This too could be extended to the L building, where many have said that this has been dilapidated. And from there, many more buildings could be renovated for a plausible lower cost, with the money from Measure PCC. The amount of money that has been allocated for just the architectural and design company alone, which is what, over $200 million, is quite astonishing, given the limited budget we have for Measure PCC, and I believe the renovation cost of the L buildings and their destruction would both alleviate this cost, help spread resources to other PCC buildings and needs, and help preserve the unique historical identity of this college, an identity far too few have anymore in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Real, and it sounds to me like we have a perfect segue into the facilities strategic plan, do we not, unless there are comments on the budget per se, because this raises a question similar to what Professor Michelson raised with regard to the W building, is replacement rather than some kind of renovation really justified, and the same thing is being asked with regard to the L building. So we have, we'll go ahead, and Candace, why don't you talk, and then Todd has something else that he has to say about the budget. Why don't we go ahead and turn that over to you?
Sure. So I want to lead with our Board of Trustees. Their primary responsibility to this institution is two things. They have two jobs. One, to oversee the fiscal viability and the decisions of this college. So they take that role and responsibility very seriously. So that's one of their roles. And then the second is policy-driven pieces. And so leading with understanding that their primary role for this college is financially driven, I would say that we always go and make sure that they're understanding all of the decisions related to any fiscal related matters, which is the reason why all contracts go up before the Board of Trustees every month. All purchase order, all sort of authorizations to build projects and those things. Nothing gets decided or expended without their approval first. And so, as I sort of segue into the facility strategic plan, I want to give you an update about what's happening at the college and sort of where the order of this meeting happened. So prior to this meeting being scheduled, our Board of Trustees meeting was supposed to happen before this meeting, which they have asked us for, hey, give us all the enrollment calculations, the cost projections, which we've done for both R, W, and L building. They asked us for all that data. Unfortunately, their meeting got shifted into the 18th, so it got pushed after that. And so those calculations really need to start with them. I can't release them to this body first before our Board of Trustees sees them. So that's the intention. So that's where the shift has happened. What I would say about the process that has happened over the past couple of months, we have hosted many campus forums related to the facilities updates. And so, again, this process isn't to revet the approved facility strategic plan. We have an approved plan. The goal of this plan is to sort of take a step back and just see if there are any adjustments that need to be made because of enrollment shifts. You know, is there sort of sequencing pieces that need to be adjusted related to the originally approved plan? So we're not picking a part of that plan because the community spent a great deal of time, 4 years since 2016 to 2020 to get an approved plan. We're not going to take the next 3 months to tear it apart. Our intention, though, is to see, is there something that we've missed? So as we listened to the different constituent groups, we hosted 2 large, varied campus forums, some on campus safety, so we did a technology review for the campus. We hosted smaller sessions with constituent groups across campus, our librarians. We went over to our Foothill campus because in our facility strategic plan, there wasn't an expression of what to do with Foothill, so we thought, let's do some listening sessions there. Are there some opportunities to pull in some new projects related to Foothill? We did some listening tours. Associated Students hosted us to come out and do some listening tours there. We actually went with our kinesiology and our athletics department. Again, there isn't an expression in the current plan related to what happens with athletics or athletic-related facilities. So we thought that that was a good moment for us to collect some additional information. And with that, though, then we collected all this data and we sort of said, okay, campus, we've heard a lot of need, right? We have 20,000 students, 3,000 faculty and staff, right? So there's a lot of voice out there related to the needs of this college. And so what we did then is think through all of the needs related to all of these various program areas, from CTE to credit-related programs to non-credit-related programs, and how can then we sequence the original existing facility strategic plan or master plan into a project list that then can be expressed to the campus community related to specifically the Measure PCC funding. So those project lists were given out through our shared governance process. We went to our academic senate, our classified senate, management association, our associated students, college councils tomorrow, and have walked through them with these project lists to say, hey, we've heard some pieces. Do we have some renovation ideas that we want to sort of come up with related to Measure PCC funding? How do we fit these already approved plans, like a new student services building? Is that something that's going to go first? Or are we actually going to produce a new academic building? Is that going to go first? And so we've done some sequencing recommendations for our board. We then go to our Board of Trustees after collecting all of this input with a recommendation to them on June 18th. So I don't want to sort of be remiss in, why isn't the W building on here? That's because our meeting got pushed, right? I have to give the courtesy to go to our Board of Trustees and deliver that information first. And I'm happy, I would be happy for you to either attend that meeting or watch it live stream or come after the fact to see it. And then we can also discuss it at a later point at a future CUC meeting.
Thank you. Before we turn to our public comment, are there any questions or clarifications the committee wants? Okay, thank you, Candace. So Todd Jones is asked to speak on this item, facility strategic plan update and foreseeable funding.
So we need to be able to foresee the spending plan of the $565 million bond measure. Today's expense report shows the spending so far on the initial $130 million. Late last year, we saw the areas of spend, which was this chart here, which were projected for the full bond spending. So this committee should be aware of the spending plan and should seek to know the costs of all the components that make up the spending. And on the areas of spend, in particular, there's the central column there, construction and demolition totaling 267 some odd million. So on this page here, I've blown that up a little bit. So of that 267 million, it goes to student services, building sciences. So student service building is there on the map. And then the sciences building, which is also health sciences, is over there, going to be next to the Serapian. Galloway Plaza, little dot there, and W building demolition would be that location there next to the pool. And then the Rosemead satellite will go down there, Rosemead, of course. Here is, I created a little pie chart of the areas of spend of the 565 million. And it shows small projects, which totaled 18.1 million. And that, for example, included the Octagon. And then infrastructure, 44 million, which is utility upgrades, solar projects, sewer and storm drains. And then this chunk here was to repay the Serapian building loan. So it turns out there was a loan, and then also, I believe, the state paid for some of the Serapian building. So it did cost more than 31 million. This huge section here is the 267 million for the construction and demolition. And so I wrote in there student services building, sciences building, Galloway, and so on and so on. And then my question is, or you see all the question marks over here, is what are the costs of each of these big buildings, these big projects? The student services building is 70,000 square feet is the estimate. The sciences building is 88,000 square feet. Galloway Plaza Cafe is only 3,000 square feet. W building demolition, it is a 43,000 square foot building, and Rosemead campus is projected to be a 64,000 square foot. But we don't know the amounts that those are going to cost. And don't forget down here, they're planning to put on the academic CTE building on top of the footprint of the W building, 100,000 square foot building. We don't know how much that costs. And then the remaining huge portion over here is what we've been talking about, with the what was it, construction management. Thank you.
Okay, there's a question about mostly about the pie chart, which goes up to, and so as we move forward, I guess we'll see developing detail on the allocation between the various buildings, and I think it probably is fair when we spread costs out, soft costs and versus the hard construction costs versus some of the other things, to try to get a handle on what the entire cost is for each building. And that's speculative at this point, given everything, but is there a point at which we will be able to have some breakdown of cost per building on that, so that we see more of that, and maybe have a little more understanding about the blue part of the pie there, the blueberry pie, that seems to be pretty rich compared to the pumpkin pie.
So I'll answer it in a couple ways. I want to clarify based on Serapian, it says Serapian building. The actual repayment of the COP is listed on your expense report. It's 24 million. I know I said to you earlier, Dr. Obo, was 27, it's 24, so it's listed here, $24,346,903.21. So I would like to just clarify that that's what the repayment expense is. The difference between, again, construction, what you guys will start to see is you're going to, for the next year or two, you're going to see most of our costs in the soft cost piece. there's a lot of planning and architectural work and site prep and work with constituent groups to program buildings, including going through the DSA process. That includes all of these sort of capacities or capabilities that we use bond professionals for, like architects and engineers to help design buildings. And so before we actually start to get a hammer out and work on actual building or building materials, a lot of the planning and technical work that's done up front, so that then when we get into the building phases, you will then see, okay, we can execute this particular project. So just for your reference, you're gonna see for the next year and a half more of our soft cost issue until we break ground on these facilities. So I wanna say that. Related to the actual cost of each of the buildings, we have breakdowns that we will be presenting to our Board of Trustees related to that. And then depending on what the board approves in terms of our options of our project list, that would then drive which projects are going within the Measure PCC funding source, which will be at that June 18th meeting, coming soon.
So I guess this question is for each of you, or both of you. Is this expenditure for the outside consultants, project management, is it out of line with other projects in the state, or is this pretty typical?
This is pretty typical, as is with, I mean, Trustee Osterling, I think, read his memo in, because he's in construction, right? So before he left out of office, I think he wrote a message to this committee kind of helping you sort of see that the construction costs that fall under construction management are reasonable. And to Richard's point today, they can range from anywhere from 20 to 40% depending on the type of project that it is. I mean, if we're doing a renovation project of a classroom, we're not going to have a large construction management sort of cost to that. But a building of a 100,000 square foot building, we're going to have that.
If I can.
Yes, please.
I'll speak to my experience from running an inspection department in the second largest school district. So inspection costs, which are required by DSA, which are very similar to project management costs, they're almost inversely proportionate to the cost of the project. So a very large project, like let's say Serafian, my inspection costs will be somewhere in the 2% range because the budget is X number of dollars, $50, $60 million. The inspection budget for the 2 years is going to be $2 to $3 million. So that really skews the percentage. Yet if I have a small project, like a little octagon gym, where it went on a very long duration and it is a small project, I'm still required to have a project manager managing the project. I'm still required to have a DSA inspector inspecting the job. And so what happens is inversely, as you have a smaller project, those overhead costs go over the 2%. They'll be as high as 12 to 15%. So when we look at this, these are, I think what everybody's getting wrapped up in here is, these are just estimates. We haven't expended it. We don't have an approved reordering of a project list. And as we go through and get the budgets, we take those budgets and we break them down into all the percentages. And so what's happening here is we're taking our best guess on construction management fees based on the industry standards. Right now, Serafian is running somewhere around 17 to 18% of expended money. We still haven't substantially completed, and I think that, talking with my counterparts, we think that it's probably going to come into somewhere around 24% of soft costs on Serafian. This is very similar to Measure P. I think there's a lot of numbers out there. It's confusing. I know a lot of you don't do this for a living on a daily basis, so it's very easy to take numbers and get them in a formula, and it doesn't really give you what's actually happening. So I think to Candace's point, if we take pause, let us go through our process with the Board of Trustees. We will see very transparently the budgets. We will go through some of these projects as we live this bond. Some projects are going to come in under budget, and we're going to be really happy. and that money goes back into the coffers, which then either is realized in additional projects, or there are going to be some projects that go in over budget. There are so many things that we do not have control of. We don't have control over the market. As contractors have more work and they're doing more work, they can pick and choose and they raise their rates. When times are a little leaner and they have to be competitive, they lower their rates. So there's so many different factors on what actually delivers a project. Pandemic, case in point, we saw big escalations in material and we saw some shortages and time constraints. Serafian is over on time budget. By no fault of the districts or no fault of the contractors, there's certain things that have happened in the supply chain that takes that on. Now, the problem is I can't tell everybody to go home while we're waiting for the piece of equipment to come in. They're still here working and charging to the project. And that's why you get these varying swings in overhead costs.
I was here as a faculty member when Shanford Library was built. And so, as a librarian, these costs, these consultants were so valuable. And it took a long, long time before we got the shovel and broke ground. So I think when you see a pie chart like this, it's misleading because it looks like it's horrendous, but they're there with you every step of the way. And it's very extensive, including going to the state, and, all the things that are involved to get before you even break ground. So.
Just one little last thing. What you're not seeing right now is the copious amount of time that we as staff members are putting into this. This is not reflected in the chart.
Right.
There was a large funding of, by the district of full-time staff that are here. Now, some of us will, when we start actually breaking ground and building projects, some of us will be actually have direct charges to these projects. But currently, right now, as we're in development, there's a huge sunken cost by the district. Candace, myself, Jesse, Ms. Ed. I have other staff members, that we're working through.
Accountant.
Yeah, and that's all, you're not even seeing those in those soft costs.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, okay.
Go ahead.
My concerns at this particular moment from a meeting perspective is I think before we even get into the soft costs or whatever that comes up with it, the fiduciary responsible for those costs or not, I feel like, first I want to plot out how Jones put these projections, speculated projections out there. But that is based on facility master plan, and throughout this whole meeting that I'm hearing, this master plan is not only just going to be paid for by major PCC. So many of these soft costs could be based on state budgets or whatever. And then, so do we have any kind of, if we're just looking at the major PCC budget perspective, it does not tell the whole picture.
Of the facilities need on
Yeah,
campus.
like this $500 million or whatever, it's not
just
going
a
to
portion.
go through the entire major PCC or whatever. It's the bond oversight specifically for major PCC. It seems like we're kind of stuck, like major PCC is stuck in basically whatever the state or other funding is not providing for them. We're going to use the PCC, which is what the bond is for. But there's no estimates or anything from you guys, like for the initial 2 years of soft costs or whatever. Are these going to be predominantly paid for through Measure PCC, or you
The
guys are
soft costs related
anticipating?
to any new construction is going to go directly from Measure PCC.
That's
We
what
would
I
not-
want to find.
We would not
Yes.
use deferred maintenance funds to do a
Right.
design of the new student services. I mean, based on Mary Ann's sort of first point, in terms of the lockstep, like they really get in and really work with the institution about designing spaces, which then produce these conceptual designs and diagrams and things. It's a long, really intense process. So we're going to use Measure PCC. Where there's some flexibility is when we get into sort of infrastructure, sort of deferred maintenance. We're always going to choose to use Fund 41 or Fund 43, which is our scheduled maintenance, first. because we want to leverage the money that's coming from the state for those purposes, and where we need to, then we will come back into Measure PCC 4. I will say though, if you, again, the district is very transparent related to our budget allocations and what we receive from the state. So if you look at our audit reports, they cover all of our funding. So Fund 41, which is capital outlay, Fund 42, which is now Measure PCC, and then Fund 43, which is our scheduled maintenance. You can look and see exactly what PCC has received from those funding sources, and then see how we're expending those resources.
Thank you. That answered my question exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's,
Just one quick suggestion.
Please.
Perhaps maybe for each project listed, I don't see the breakdown of architect's inspection, testing, engineer. Maybe it will be helpful to have a breakdown of the soft costs for each project, just to be transparent.
Sure.
With public.
Yeah, as soon as when we get those plant like she's on page 2.
Oh, every single page I see.
Some of them have them. So if they're a project that's in flight where we've gone through some of the planning phase, we will add those budget areas to those items. But to your point, maybe we can think of estimates related to those pieces. That might be, I think again, once we get direction from our board of trustees around which project list the college is going to go with for Measure PCC, that'll be helpful for us to start to preload some of those pieces.
I want to just make
Please.
one comment. So what you're seeing here, so let me walk you through the process, since you guys don't do this every day. And I do. We have a meeting, we have to develop a project. We go to our architects list and we ask for proposals, right? And each architect will look at the general scope that the college gives, and they'll give a proposal for designing that. And then we will either go off of best value or we'll go off lowest bid. Usually we do a best value since we have a short list, and best value is based on architect's experience within that discipline, and completed projects and their project team. We have a rating scale, and now we award the architect the design portion. So at that point, we know the RFP, we know the proposal. Jesse will then throw in an architect, X dollars. Now, when the architect goes through and designs the project, works with the college, works with the stakeholders, and designs the project, at the end of designing the project, they do what's called a rough order of magnitude. And that gives us a cost based on today's rates, or if the project's going to go multiple years, they put in a cost escalation because there's inflation every year, and they give us a rough order of magnitude for what the construction costs, including some of the soft costs. At that point, we would be able to fully vet out the budget based on the architect's estimate, and then we as internally will then manage the project and find out if we're going over in project management, why are we, was there a problem with the plans, was there a problem with some sort of regulatory thing, and we manage that budget after we get there. So we're not there yet. We're still working on a project list. As Candace had pointed out earlier, some of these projects were in stream, and we were able to leverage some of the monies that they fit into the bond package. So going forward, you're going to get more detailed information as we have an approved vetted project list, and as we get through designs and we get rough order of magnitudes from our architects.
thank you, Richard. I saw some nodding as I think that Justin's question about the strategic plan's scope goes beyond the $565 million that we would have under Measure PCC. And so if that's so, the project planning and management costs that are projected here that Todd had brought up, those pertain only to projects that would be funded under Measure PCC and not for doing planning or other things related to something that might come or with some other funding beyond that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's all related to the projects that we're doing under this. And is there, in terms of our money available, as other tranches of the funding become available, the next parts of the bond measure go out, do you have any idea about whether you're going to get the same interest rates that we got on these, or whether we're gonna
We're
end
hopeful.
up paying a lot more?
I think we're hopeful. I think our schedule was every 2 years to go out to the market and sell bonds. I think it all depends and it drives based on where we're at in expending the existing funds. So we're never gonna bring in more funds that we need to cover our expenses.
Okay,
Because it doesn't do any benefit for us to just have that money sitting. So currently, we're scheduled to go back out in 2026, I think is.
okay. Thank you. Now, you saw in the information packet that just as we move forward, and we're going to, before we get past it here, you saw that there were a couple of handouts that are not agendized, but that you had a chance to review. And when we get down to item D2 on proposed agenda items, if you have anything that you want to discuss, I think you saw in your booklet that there is a rather fulsome purchase order transaction of what purchase orders went out, several pages here of details, and you can see who we bought what from. This has to do with our local purchasing and other things, but if you have any questions that you want to raise about that, put on the agenda for the next meeting, you might start thinking about how you want to phrase that, but there's a lot of things here, and I think the purpose of this handout, I think, again, is supposed to talk about our local purchases.
It
Well,
was
I had
actually
asked, yeah.
based
sorry.
on.
Brandon,
Yeah,
what were you?
I had asked. So thank you guys for providing that information. To me, I just think that it's always good for us to support local businesses within our community, and so I think it's good to see those things here. Thank you guys for providing that.
Okay, and so, and then we also have, with regard to Measure P, an audit report, and I think this is available to the public.
This is on the website, so
And
we
this is
just
on
wanted
the-
to make sure you have a printed copy of it, but it's available on the PCC website, which is the last Measure PCC June 30th, 2021 financial audit. So we just wanted to print it so that you had it available
Okay,
when there are questions or claims made based on Measure P.
So if you want to read through that, and if you have anything, we can agendize something for the next meeting. If you have those things, if you get back.
Just a resource.
That's what your candidates, but it's nice to see that we ended up with a distress discount and some other things in there that I think got us more for our money under Measure P than we had expected. So thank you for those additional disclosures. And we have under.
Well, I'd like to ask about audit reports. You're giving us the old one. What exactly should we?
There was a question, we just wanted to make sure that you had it available to, there was a question related to Measure P expenses that was brought up in a previous public comment, and so the actual factual information is in the audit report, so we're bringing the audit report to your attention. So if you were had any additional late night curiosity things or need to go to sleep, whichever, you can read the audit report at your leisure.
So, I think I asked the question a couple of minutes ago. The answer, I apologize.
It's okay.
But at some point, we will actually be asked to take action. And we haven't really yet been asked to take any action.
The action for tonight is probably, Dr. Opel, would be to just accept the expense report as reported to you all this evening. That's probably the only action tonight. I think your other responsibility is producing your own sort of commentary related to an audit that you all will review and approve yourselves.
Well, at some point, we will be asked to tell voters that we've concluded that the management influence.
We will be doing an annual
Every year.
report each year.
When will that time, when we're actually called upon to perform our duty, when is that likely to occur?
Go ahead, please.
Yes, maybe if I can add a little bit. So the audit is actually already underway. So our auditor had came and visited us in April, and then they had already begun reviewing the expenditures for Measure PCC. So the audit report for the fiscal year 23-24, which is this fiscal year, it should be made available to you all to review in December.
In December.
In December.
So it'll be made available to us in December, and then there'll be some meeting after December, or it'll be a meeting in December where we will be called upon to do our meeting.
Yeah, and then we could have a presentation and go over the report with you, and at that point we'll be taking.
So now it's usual and everything else for us, for a committee, whoever's being reported to have some role in the selection of the auditor. And, but we don't know anything about the auditor, their qualifications, so perhaps that's something we should know
We
something
can
about.
agendize the auditor to come to the next CBOC meeting.
Well, the auditor was retained by the trustees, right? But the bond oversight committee, I think it has some capacity to be sure that things are audited to its satisfaction, does it not?
It does. I mean, I would look at it two ways. So we want an auditor that's super familiar with college finances,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You don't just go off the street and say, audit this. They have to be very familiar. So for example, our foundation has an audit firm that's very familiar with
Sure.
you know, foundation activities, right? I mean, and they use the same auditor that the district uses, same, because they're familiar, but they report the data to the entity that it requires. They don't report the data to us, so the audit that gets done by the foundation doesn't come to the board of trustees here. It first comes to the foundation board. Similarly, the CBOC audit will come to you all for review, questions. If you're concerned about it, you could raise that with the auditor, just like the district's audit goes to the board of trustees.
So, yeah, I see this, and the first thing I see is this name. Actually, it's I do know
I
some
think,
accounting firms. So it sort of relates to, it is my understanding that oversight can insist.
You could select
I'm not
a
insisting,
different-
but it can insist on having its own auditors. So, but again, I'm not insisting, but I don't
Sure.
I don't even know who these people are. They're nobody as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
But they might be somebody
Sure.
in the college bond oversight committee, and that may be good or it may be bad. But I'd love to know more about
Sure. We will look.
before, and part of the reason I'm raising this is I don't want to raise it at the last minute.
Of course.
So that's why I'm saying, why'd you give it to us? Because we should start raising questions now, because this to me is going to be very important. It is the thing that is going to be most important to me in terms of our doing.
So I would recommend we agendize our I-Bailey. I-Bailey did the previous Measure P audits for the CBOC. It felt logical that they would continue to serve in that capacity for Measure PCC. I would recommend we could agendize them to come. You guys can ask all sorts of direct questions. They can do a presentation for you all. If there are any concerns or comments related to that, you all can make a different decision.
Be good enough
Okay.
about them.
Okay,
And,
not a problem.
background information.
Not a problem.
But is it too late, because Jesse just mentioned they already audited April, right?
They have started, but that's okay.
Yeah, and then they
If we
started
didn't
as a part of
Trust
our,
them, we could
Yeah,
grab
our
somebody,
normal
look at what they've done.
Something
As
else,
opposed
yeah,
to
settle,
somebody.
that's what.
And I'm not suggesting that, but you could have somebody.
I think it's totally reasonable for us to bring I-Bailey here.
And it's my understanding that we could do that, it would be charging ordinance.
That's correct.
These are charging.
That's where we're going to charge it.
Okay, we'll look at that under D. Why don't we go ahead, there we have agendized facilities, communications, is there anything further?
Yeah, just really quickly, Jillian Beck is here. She is a great I was going to say advocate, but I don't mean that, but an ally in this work related to communications. So she's been really great in using her talents and helping to shape sort of a communications plan for not only facilities as a whole, but then a portion of the Measure PCC, so that she could talk a little bit about a newsletter that we're planning that you all will be able to receive and then pass on to your constituents that you're representing.
Welcome.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll be brief. I know you've been here for a while. So we are planning a bi-monthly newsletter that will touch on facilities updates at PCC. Obviously, Measure PCC is a part of that. Our goal is to provide regular information for students, faculty, staff, as well as community members who can subscribe once we launch in the coming months. I wanted to share a little bit about the topics that we'll be including and kind of just introduce the fact that we're also going to be open to input and suggestions of things that would be useful for you all and also your constituents in your areas. So we're going to be having a feature story about the mirror pools project, specifically highlighting the selection of a native plant palette that was selected by the campus community and landscaping plans for the Serafian building. So kind of going into more of the specific developments of different programs so people know about the progress. We'll be highlighting some sustainability efforts and tracking our progress as we pursue sustainability goals for the campus. We know that's very, very important for our campus community and for college leadership to show the work that we're doing. One of those pieces is something that happened today, which is the fact that PCC was certified as the first green zone in the city of Pasadena, meaning that our grounds operations equipment is all zero emission, low noise. We're really excited about that. So it'll be a place to share some of that good news that's happening. We'll be able to highlight some of our local minority women-owned businesses and contractors that we're partnering with on facilities projects. We're going to be also having regular segments in the newsletter that provide kind of news you can use, reminders for folks about scheduled maintenance, project timelines, things like that, as well as work order requests and things that our campus community will like to have. And we'll also be including quick links to information about Measure PCC, about the facility strategic plan, and any updates that come through that way so that people can know when a meeting of yours is coming up, the live stream link, things like that. So the goal is to have it be a regular source of proactive communication with our community and then also with the wider community, because we know that there's a lot of interest in what's going on here. So happy to, if anyone has any questions or any suggestions, yeah.
So, thank you very much. One of my questions on my notes for tonight was how can we communicate with our constituents? So, it's perfect. It's a newsletter bi-monthly.
Yes.
Is it
bi-monthly, every other month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it electronic? Is it tangible? How is it disseminated, distributed? To whom is it?
Yes, so it's going to be digital first. We're mindful of our footprint in paper as well. It'll be digital first. It's going to be for students, faculty, and staff, and then we'll be able to offer opt-in subscription for community members. So we can't mandate that community members subscribe, but we'll be able to share an easy link that you all can share with your constituents. We can have it on the website, and then we'll also have the actual archived editions of the newsletter that will be accessible on the website as well.
Okay. And then, sorry, just one follow-up. Our constituents, so for example, I'm representing Ring 5, right? So it's a pretty decent-sized community.
Yeah.
So I certainly know folks who have an interest specifically, but for the broader community, is there a resource or a way for us to push this out to everyone in the community or those who are interested, other than just sort of knowing, hey, X, Y, and Z are interested, and so we're going to share it with them?
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to be exploring different avenues, whether that's partnering with our local media partners, social media, when we have events in the community, we'll be able to use kind of different channels to try to reach folks.
I was going to suggest, I would suggest using press releases.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Like the outlooks.
Yep, definitely.
And then also like La Cañada has its own, I think, monthly paper, the city. You might want to see if they'll put
information so people can sign from the newsletter.
That'd be great.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think it's wonderful that everybody kept mentioning articles that we read, but all of those were opinion pieces. And so I'm not going to say that they were not facts, but they didn't come from the source. And so I think having information that comes from the source that goes out into the community is very important, especially if it's always been, or I won't say always been, but it has been one-sided for so long. I think it's good that the source is actually coming out and saying something about it. So I'm very in favor of our making sure that our media, local media, definitely have access to newsletters. But I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Then do you work for Mr. Buckleheim?
I work with Mr. Bucklehead. I work for Dr. Gomez in this
Okay,
office. And I
so
work
now,
with
so then how do you coordinate? Because some of it, he is usually in touch with the press.
Yes, we work together on that. Yeah.
So for Brandon's question, I think with the press, it's still Buckleheim who's
Oh.
doing most of that, correct?
We work together on it.
Okay.
So I started here in September of last year, so still in my first year here. But Alex and I both work on the media relations. So.
If there are any suggestions on media outlets that we should pursue, please let us know. I mean, we picked up some of the normal pieces, but if there's just something that you're like, oh, it would really be really nice if it was here as well, we'd love to hear from that from you all.
So have we, I mean, and this is just a question, have we sent out anything as of
My
yet
first
regarding
edition
this?
is coming.
Well, with the pieces that people have seen in the community from local news outlets, none of that, to confirm, none of that has came from
No.
PCC or anything like that. It was just okay. Great.
Other
Just
than
wanted to make
we
sure.
had a recent media release around our AGSA certification processing program and
And then
celebration that
the
we
event that
had.
happened today.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then we'll be having more once project list is selected, and we'll be able to share more as projects continue.
Great.
Go ahead.
Do you have any liaison with the high schools in our areas? So I would think that would be great to be in the high school newsletters.
Yeah.
Maybe they go out to the parents and what PCC is doing.
And how do you coordinate with the student newspaper? Here.
Oh yeah, we also have a good relationship with the Courier. We work with them a lot. They
But
reach
they're
out to us a
maintaining
lot.
their editorial independence.
Absolutely,
and-
yeah.
And somewhat adversarial stance, I assume.
I am a former student journalist, so I respect their mission.
Been there.
One last quick question, if it's okay. This newsletter, does it go to each of the cities that are served by the PCC? So at least, because for example, South Pasadena has something called City Scoop,
Yeah.
where they push out information. So I'm just wondering if each city at least gets it.
Yeah, so we'll be compiling a list of partners that we can reach out to help us spread the word. We can't get their list from them, so
No.
we can't do it, before getting permission or having them kind of opt in. But we're going to be reaching out to all of our partners to try to get it to spread.
Like, so at least if each city gets it, but they can. spread
Yes,
it to their-
exactly.
yeah, great. Thank you.
We work with the city of Pasadena also in terms of like just extending sort of event sort of activities or any publication pieces, so that would also be a role. And then our trustees are really great, mouthpieces out in the community to sort of share that this is available to the community as well. So all wonderful ideas for us.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sorry,
and
the
so-
nursing program has just let out our penny. Yes.
And so we did approve the minutes today. Shall we have a motion to accept the expense report and the facility strategic plan update?
So moved.
So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carried.
I'm saying,
You said no?
well, I don't know that we need to accept. Was it a business item or a agenda?
It's just the expense report.
It's an information item.
So the expense report was not an information.
Well, I don't want to prejudge, I mean, that's part of it, prejudge
Yeah.
until I get my audit. That's my concern.
Okay, so I guess we recorded A,
That's fine.
one day. In terms of our future meeting dates, it looks like maybe if we're going to do it quarterly, September 17th or 19th, a Tuesday or Thursday, would be a first suggestion. Does anybody have an alternative suggestion, or how would that work with the staff? When does school start again in the fall?
It's in August.
Okay, so it'll be underway. And unless all of you feel the need to get together before that, and I don't anticipate probably that we'll have any board potluck during the summer, although we probably should probably violate some regulation. No. So how about 17th or 19th? You prefer Tuesday as we've always done, or Thursday?
I'll be out that whole week on the corporate event, so the following week will be okay, but that week I'll be completely out. That's up to you guys.
I've got conflicts the following week. I guess we could do Thursday, so let's as an alternative, how about Thursday the 27th? Any of you prefer that?
That's 26th.
Pardon?
26th.
27th is a Friday.
Oh, sure, I'm wrong. Okay. The 26th, yes. Would any of you like the 26th, Thursday? Does that work?
Sure. That could be the 26th.
Okay. And then we will meet again on Thursday, September 26th. And agenda items, we had one thing we wanted to hear was to hear from the audit committee, and the auditor, but not the audit committee, the auditor,
Do a presentation.
to do a presentation.
Unfortunately, I won't. It's me. Because none of these dates work, but I don't want to change it pretty schedule.
None of them work? None
No,
of
I'm
them work?
going to be out of town for
Okay, well, I
those
just,
2 weeks, but
does it work for the rest of you?
Yes.
Well, I just had a concern about listening to the auditor in September when they're going to complete their report in December.
So we could move back and
Yeah, I wonder
set
if we should have
August.
maybe a special meeting just to have the auditor make a presentation.
That's fine.
Okay, that'd be a concern of yours.
Are you saying earlier or do it later?
Earlier, yeah.
Well, they're.
Well, all they would be doing was, I think at this, introducing ourselves, and I take it that our purpose would be to say, yes, we'll be satisfied with this being the auditor, or are we somehow terminally uncomfortable with this being the auditor that we trust for this year?
So
Because we haven't met the auditor, and it was, we presumably it's all gonna be fine, but then that's not.
yeah, my impression is the board has hired the audit, and so they're probably not going to change their mind. And so it's
I
really
think
a
the
question
board
of-
would certainly, I mean, so you all have, if you are unhappy with the auditor, you could make a different decision. You could.
Can I ask a question about that? So when it comes to auditors, is there a RFP process for that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm guessing, because this is the same thing we did with, I guess, on the city side of it, since the RFP process had already gone through with the auditor that you had, it's a quicker process
It is.
because they're already on file to use them, because you guys used them as the last one, right?
Yeah, for Measure P.
Okay, so they're already in the system, which is why the RFP, I guess, didn't happen. So with them coming in, they would just give us what they already have, or
I mean,
how would that look like?
I would recommend they could give a presentation based on their skill set, the audits that they perform, just so that if there are any questions or concerns, it could be raised early enough so that if we needed to make a different decision, or if you all needed to, it's not even a we, if you all needed to make a different decision, we'd have an opportunity to do so. I do feel confident that, that to Dr. Opal's point, that it's going to be fine, but we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do so. So we could have a special meeting just with that piece that happens earlier. I mean, it can happen in
So,
a few weeks. I mean, it just all
Yeah.
depends on you all getting a date that works for you, and then we would work with the auditor to make sure that that date works for them as well.
is it possible for us to get a date in July just for that?
Sure.
Because, I mean, I don't wanna wait a couple of months and then, I don't think it's gonna happen, but if we say no,
Right.
Then it's
and
a
then that
problem.
person doesn't,
Okay, just sort of a sense of the committee, if we wanted to essentially put ourselves in the position of ratifying the selection of the
Yeah.
auditor, and we want to have a presentation of that sooner rather than later, as Brandon had suggested, just how many of you would be in favor of that?
So for me, I would probably ask them, I assume they would render the same opinions that they render, and I'd have some questions, like, because I see what I consider to be qualifications to their opinion, like, they're not in a full opinion, or what's considered a qualified opinion.
Well, are any of us qualified to make an opinion on an auditor?
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
It's our
are.
job to-
Every board has to select, ratify the selection of an auditor, as far as I know, and get the report.
It seems like we're already
We're
doing
relying
work.
on that, I think the question came up at our first meeting about where, in terms of what the staff's telling us and what we understand, and various criticisms about what it has to do with the details, how deeply do we want to delve into it? We all know they do things on a sampling basis, they have a test. Presumably in this test, a big question will be, to what extent do you look at the bond language and the way the money is spent and see that they are adhering to those standards? That's what really, because they're doing that at a detailed level for us in some way. So if we want to go ahead and ratify that, we should do that. And the question is, since they're already underway, and that's presumably not going to change right away, we wouldn't have to accept their report if we don't like it at the end.
Exactly.
So do we want to go ahead and have them give us a presentation of their credentials and answer any questions in September, or do you want to have a special meeting before then, say July?
I think we should go with July. My thing is, even if they do the audit and we don't accept it, that means we have to go through the process to get a whole nother audit for auditor in December. And it's gonna take even longer for that process to happen, whether.
Okay, is that a motion? Okay,
Yes.
that's a motion. We have a second?
I just have a
I'll
question.
second.
I'll second.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
How much would it cost to get an auditor? Because I mean, that's thousands of dollars, right? I mean,
Yeah, I guess.
because I'm assuming they're paying a lot for this auditor.
There's a lot of complexity to it, but there are auditors, I don't know.
And
I think
and
they're different
remember that
kinds.
the auditor is independent, so even when we have auditors that come in and audit the district funds, they're not here to work for Jesse and I, or to make things, I mean, they have professional licenses that require that they perform the audit function independent of any district personnel in any way, shape, or form. So even like our district auditor, so like our auditors can go into closed session with our trustees without any district personnel there. Because or our trustees can ask for that, or you all could ask for that, right? So I think the first important piece would be to start with a July meeting. That's great, we can work with the auditors for them to do a presentation of their skill set, the process by which they perform the audit, and then allow you all to ask questions related to your skill set, expertise, or how you all are going to communicate with them, probably through either Dr. Opal or Brandon as vice chair. Like, how does that information get? I think it's okay to be clear about where sort of the diligent pieces are put in place to make sure that you get the information that you need.
So let me be
July
clear.
meeting is fine.
Let me be clear on my motion. I feel like I was a little rushed. So I make a motion for us to have a special meeting in July with also keeping our September meeting date as well. And so, yeah, that's my motion.
And you were thinking about the first Thursday, were you, Brandon?
First Thursday in July. As long as it's not July 4th.
No, okay. Okay. July 4th. Okay, well, how many are opposed to the motion?
I'm
Without-
not opposing to the motion, but I am traveling internationally after July
Okay, but you're not
19th.
both, okay.
So
So
if
let's-
before July 19th, I'm available.
Before July 19th?
Yeah.
Okay, so, what, Brandon, you propose a date.
July 13th? Oops, sorry.
That's a
no,
Saturday.
Sorry, I was in the wrong month. July 11th?
July 11th, Thursday, does that sound okay?
Sure.
Unfortunately, I can't wait that date.
July 9th.
Yeah, July 9th, I could do.
Pick your dates over here.
July 9th? Okay, anybody opposed to July 9th? July 9th it is.
Can
And
we
we'll,
get that confirmed with the auditor?
okay.
Will they charge us for this?
Probably.
They will.
Okay, so, we have the auditor. Are there any other agenda items? Well, that'll just be our auditor on the 9th. And then on the 26th of September, are there other agenda items that we're, yeah,
Can we have an update on communications?
update on communications, okay? Well, that's fine, we'll put that in on the agenda.
Update on the W building?
Update on W.
Specific to what meeting?
Well, you couldn't give us a lot of information at this meeting because you haven't been appointed. So, if there's any questions we have after that.
Sure. We could make sure that you have the presentation available that's at the board meeting and then walk through.
Right, and that question, especially addressing the question of the break point for declaring it obsolete when the cost is, repair and upgrade cost exceeds some, whatever the percentage is and all that, just so we understand what the logic was.
Yep, I think that's good.
If
We get to see that
it's
on June
decided that
18th.
way.
You
I'll write it online.
Oh, yes, okay. But yeah, we could revisit that, the same
Because there's a
presentation.
lot of controversy about it.
Sure.
We've heard, yeah.
And others? Other items? Okay, so we'll have update on communications, update on the W building and the trustees' decision. And that's
Can we
it.
frame that though, so I want to be careful, like the trustees' decision, and then we're like, well, why did the trustees decide this? Could it be a facility strategic plan update of the board of trustees meeting on June 18th, which would include,
Yeah,
okay,
that'd be great.
okay.
That would be better.
Yeah, so then
Well,
we
that-
get all of the
Right.
information, not just that though.
Yeah, that's work.
So,
Any,
just one follow-up, so do you think on June 18th they will validate the project list?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be.
That's correct. That's the intention.
okay. Any final comments, bon mots, admonitions? It's great to hear our graduates celebrating in the auditorium. Which ones are these?
These are our nursing students.
Okay, and they're getting RNs?
They get, yeah, and then they get pinned. They're
Are these the
official
RNs, so they
ceremonies.
get their
Pinning.
pins, no caps anymore?
No, they're all in, if you saw them, they were in their
Yeah.
scrubs, so they get an official pin.
Didn't we have a common road that
We did a
community
motion
college can offer 4 years?
Do we need a motion
There
to
were-
adjourn? I will take the prerogative of declaring the meeting adjourned.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Did we adjourn? I'm sorry? Yes, the meeting is adjourned?
He said,
Okay.
Okay.
royalty free.
Thanks.